What's good, guys? CJ here, and today we gotta react to another video regarding how free-to-play is Galbrena, right? How free-to-play friendly Galbrena actually is. And y'all know today we've been talking about Galbrena quite a lot. We've been giving my take on this character, and we have several videos on the channel breaking down pretty much everything you need to know about Galbrena. We did test her for 2 weeks extensively on the test servers, and we have a lot of insider information regarding this character, but as y'all know, when the character officially released, we'll do even more testing. There is a lot of things y'all want to know regarding Galbrena, and I have a lot of opinions regarding this unit. So without further ado, let's hop on in and see what Juice cooked up with this video.
How free-to-play friendly is Galbrena actually? Let's talk about it. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Okay, so as we all know, Galbrena was recently revealed by Kuro Games, and we have a decent amount of information on her now. So now we must beg the question, is Galbrena a free-to-play friendly unit? And if so, then why? And if not, then also why? Well, I would make the proposition that she is free-to-play accessible. It just kind of depends on where you've put your investments.
I'm gonna be honest, I actually think Galbrena in her entirety, so counting Galbrena and her banner, are pretty free to play friendly. Now, the reason I say that is because Galbrena is going to be able to be slotted in with multiple characters, and they're going to produce premium teams. A lot of other units that you get, you can slot them with other characters, but they don't produce premium teams. So for example, you can get a Zani and slot her with Spectra Rover. That's not a premium team. It'll perform, but it won't be premium. You can get Cardathea and slot her in with Sanhua and clear content, but it will not be a premium team. Whereas a character like Galbrena, you can slot her in with her best in slot, which is Shi Yuan, and that'll be a premium team. You can slot her in with a Brandt and a Lupa, and that'll be a premium team. You can slot her in with a Brandt and a Shangli, and that'll be a premium team. And then you have the other characters that won't be premium teams, like, for example, slotting her with a Mortefi. So she does have quite a few characters that you can slot her in to generate premium teams, as well as other units that you can slot her in to generate pretty good teams, right? So I think that's a valid, positive thing from this character. And then on top of the fact that if we look at her banner, you're going to be able to get Mortefi and Sanhua from her banner, which is absolutely amazing for multiple other teams and multiple other situations. So that right there is pretty free to play friendly, if you ask me.
What I mean by that is that if you've been playing for a while and you have a certain set of 5-star characters, then I feel like Galbrena is going to feel very accessible to you. But if you haven't invested in that set of characters, then she's probably not even going to feel that inaccessible because she's still going to have options, but perhaps you might consider getting someone else. Essentially, I'd say that if you've invested a lot into fusions, you have a Lupa, you have a Brandt, but you don't have the full triple fusion team, then yes, Galbrena is worth your time. Now, I do think that if you already have a full triple fusion team, then there's just not really much reason to get her, but that's besides the point. We're talking about a free-to-play friendliness here, and in terms of free-to-play friendliness, if you're somebody who has collected a couple of these units, then you're able to use them over using Shuen. However, the thing is, most of the really good fusions are 5 stars, and because of that, that ends up not being that free-to-play friendly. Sure, Lupa is going to be running alongside her, and Brand Wuthering Waves has had numerous banners by this point, and there's also been an adequate amount of time to get Changli multiple times as well. However, the fact of the matter still stands. Those are multiple 5-star characters, and if you're collecting them all, chances are you're going for triple fusion. So, that's not exactly the most free-to-play friendly approach, and that is why I say that it's more so something you can consider if you've already invested into that direction. Though I assume that if you're investing into that direction, you already had something that you were planning to do in the first place. But either way, it's something you can consider, but it does dock some points for her free-to-play friendliness. Because no matter how good of a pull the individual fusion units are, the fact of the matter still stands that she primarily wants 5-star teammates. And if you're not getting those 5-star teammates, then you can consider getting Yuen, who is also a 5-star teammate. Her teams just don't end up being that accessible. However, you have to remember, as long as it's not a negative status character, not having a 5-star teammate is not that bad of a detriment. Is it?
I don't personally consider, a free-to-play character as a character that can just run with a bunch of 4-star units, because the reality of it is that most teams that can run 4-star units relatively well are already kind of underperforming compared to other teams, right? There are exceptions like Augusta with Mortefi, right? But for the most part, most other teams that you're pairing up with 4-star characters are already doing, you know, kind of mid. I think that a character that is free to play friendly is a unit that has many options, right? And in this scenario, while she doesn't have a bunch of 4-star characters, let's be honest, what 5-star character has a bunch of 4-star options? Most 5-star characters will either be running with Sanhua or Mortefi. That's it. You ain't gonna be running no characters with no random ass Yuan Wu, with no Lumi. While some can, you're really not doing that. Most characters only really have one viable 4-star option. So the fact that she does have a viable 4-star option in Mortefi, and then she has a bunch of different 5-star characters she can run with, gives her variety. If you're someone that has pulled Brandt before, you can pair her up with Brandt. If you're someone that has pulled Shang-Li, you can pair her up with Shang-Li. If you're someone that has pulled Lupa, you can pair her with Lupa. If you're someone that just pulled Yuno, you can pair her with Yuno for the heavy attack buff. So there are many options to Galbrena and the character she can run with, right? In the 5-star department, which cannot be said for a lot of other units, right? If you have a Cardathea, you're normally going to want to run her with like a Sia Kona or not really that much else. There are other options, but they won't work as well, and it's the same for a lot of other units, right? So I do think Galbrena on that regard is pretty free to play friendly when it comes to team building. And even if you have one or two of the other fusion characters, while you can aim for the mono fusion team, you can also just slot them in with Galbrena and you'll be absolutely done with a premium fusion team.
A detriment, absolutely, and I'm not going to say that it's always a small one. However, it is undeniably going to be better than if you didn't have a 5-star teammate for a negative status character. You're still going to be better off. For example, in this case, you can still use Mortefi with her and use Shorekeeper in the 3rd slot.
Yeah.
Is it going to be as strong as using the fusions or Shuen? No, most likely not, but most people have Shorekeeper.
It's not about most likely not. It will 100% not be as strong as using her best in slot or premium 5-star characters, right? If you run her with her best in slot, she's going to have the best results. So while running Mortefi is going to be a placeholder, don't compare that and don't expect the same results as running her premium partner.
Accessible to literally every beginner player that starts the game, provided that they decide to pull for Shorekeeper as their limited 5-star that they can get from 1 X. And she's also had another rerun banner recently, so I feel like a majority of people should have her. Otherwise, Verena is obviously going to work, as she always has.
Yeah.
So whenever you consider that, yes, she is going to have a free-to-play friendly team option, but how strong it's going to be, we'll see. I don't really think this is going to be an Augusta case where we have that perfect level of balance. And that's because we just don't really have a 4-star character that is on Mortefi's level, but is able to help out Echo scale damage characters.
Yep, exactly. That's true. While Mortefi will be able to run with her, it will not be a perfect fit like Mortefi with Augusta. That was a perfect case scenario. And like Juice just said, we don't have a character that can buff that particular aspect of Galbrena.
If we ever did get that, that would be awesome, but I don't think we're going to do that, because then that's going to make Choyuen redundant. And if you're a free-to-play, unless you're just a big Choyuen simp such as myself, you're probably just not really going to be interested in getting him because he's on the more niche side. Is he a good unit? Absolutely.
I've already covered this a lot, guys. Stop thinking like that. Stop thinking about niche and all of that. It's just, who's your main DPS? Who's the character you like as your main DPS? Who's their best in slot support or sub DPS? And you get them. It doesn't matter if that character is very specific to your main DPS. If they're a team, if they're synergistic, if they're meant to run together, if that's what you got to do to extend the duration of your main DPS that you really like and you want to see him carry you for a long time, you get that character, right? While you can run other units together, like for example, like Juice was saying, you can run Mortefi with Galbrena. The reality of it is that you want to run your best in slot units to give that DPS more longevity. It's that simple.
I don't want you thinking that Choyuen is bad. I have seen some people getting a bit worried that he's not really that good. Don't get that idea. He is a good character, but the issue is that he's definitely more on the niche side.
Let's be honest, we don't know anything about Shuen. We've seen a little bit in the dev stream. Other than that, we don't know his multipliers. We don't know his skills. I mean, I know them because I, beta testing, but saying that he's a good character before we officially globally get information on him, we see what his official finalized stats and, you know, multipliers and everything is a lot. I would advise you guys to wait and see until the devs give us more information. Once 2.7 launches and we get Galbrena's banner in the gallery of the game, we will have the information of Shuen. So at that point, we can, you know, look into it, see what he has to offer, break him down, and then you guys will have the information. But for now, officially, we don't have that information.
That's his personal job done well, but if you have no interest in that personal job, or you just think that it's too niche of an investment, and you're not really that big on Farlova or Galbrena, then he just ends up not really being all that worth it. So Galbrena ends up landing in this awkward position where she's not necessarily anti-free-to-play by any means, but she's definitely more on the costly side in terms of teammates. And that is why I say that it kind of depends on how long you've been playing. Wuthering Waves' pull count per patch is generally very good, and I do think that because of how many fusions we have, at this point you probably should have at least one, and if you don't, that's completely fine. There is much reason to have skipped them for whatever reason that may be.
That's a good way to put it, the way she said it, right? She is more on the costly side regarding her teammates, but once again, not a lot of characters get full usage of their 4-star, you know, partners. They only really get 1 or maybe 2 specific bonuses to them, but it's rare that you'll have an Augusta Mortifi situation.
And you can save yourself making that investment by just going for Cho Yuen. And you could argue that it's nice that she's able to work with those other fusion characters, because it removes the pressure to go and invest in that direction. You don't have to get Cho Yuen. If you've already invested in the fusions, you're going to be fine. And I think that's generally a good thing.
That's actually true. Like, it's 100% true. The team will now move from a absolute hyper carry Galbrena, if you get Galbrena and Cho Yuen, to more of a team damage oriented comp if you run like Galbrena with like Brandt and Shang Li. It'll still perform really good, it'll still clear really good, but it'll just clear differently, if that makes any sense.
It is good on Crow Games that they've made the unit accessible in that sense, and in that sense, you're also going to be able to save more Astrites and just invest more into Galbrena personally if you didn't already have any interest in Cho Yuen. You can also squeeze in the fusions in other ways. For example, Lupa into Mortefi into Galbrena, if you do have Lupa but you might not have the other two. There is ways to go about it, and there are workarounds, but I'm hesitant to call them free-to-play friendly, because generally speaking, when we say free-to-play friendly, what we really mean is the unit able to work cheaply? Can they work well on a 4-star and not feel really bad to use? I don't necessarily think Galbrena is going to feel bad on a cheap setup. I just don't think that's going to be the case. I'm sure she's going to feel just fine. But is she going to feel significantly weaker? Probably.
But that's the case with every character, isn't it? Where they feel significantly weaker with a 4-star on their team than their best in slot 5-star character.
I think Augusto is probably the most well-balanced unit in this sense. Mortefi is absolutely excellent for her, an amazing 4-star heavy attack buffer that is able to compensate for not having Yuno. However, Yuno is a fantastic unit and is a more than sufficient upgrade to your teams, while also just being a really good pull for your overall account if you have some certain teammates. So I would say that they did that amazingly, because that was a situation where literally everybody won. You could comfortably skip Yuno if you didn't really want her, and you could comfortably invest into her if you wanted your Yuno to reach max potential, and I personally think that's a very good thing. In this situation, it's kind of awkward to pull for Cho Yuen if you're not really committed to the Echo archetype, and if you're not really into that, then he just kind of ends up feeling a bit redundant to get on his own, especially if you have more limited resources, and Galbrena is already a somewhat redundant addition to the roster. Sure, she could end up being really strong, but you have to consider, basically every DPS is good these days. If they make a new DPS, they are going to be good. This is generally a very well-balanced game, and you can consider basically any DPS released in the last year or so, or if you want to push it a bit, then sure, the last 8-9 months, but generally, you get the point, they're going to be good. Simply having good damage is becoming less and less of a focal point for a character's value. Sure, it can definitely define a second slot teammate's value, because most of the time the damage is what makes him so flexible. Brandt Wuthering Waves absolutely feels so much worse without a signature. And that's
Yeah.
because it really gimps his damage. You're not able to build tide breaking as easily. Obviously, you can just use Blood Pact Pledge, but it's still not going to be anywhere as good as using Unflickering Valor. So in that case, yes, damage does count a lot. And in Yuno's case, damage does count a lot. That is a very large part of her value, and it's why she's able to freaking carry Gion in some cases. However, for a main DPS character in WoA, you can basically always be rest assured that they're going to be good, so I wouldn't really say that you should pull for damage anymore, because we have plenty of high damaging options. That isn't really the only thing at this point, so I would say it's better to prioritize other things: Whimpering Wastes coverage, TOA coverage, fusion element coverage in general. You get the idea. There are plenty of different factors to cover here. And to put it into perspective for you, Carlotta released quite a while ago at this point, and she is still a very high damaging character. Seriously, they are never going to release a main DPS that is just bad. So if damage is your only concern, yes, she is going to do damage. And even if you're on a really cheap setup, I'm sure if you put in enough time and effort, you can compensate for your lack of investment with skill. Wuthering Waves has that nice quality, where if you're not really all that invested, you can still compensate for a lot of your damage loss by simply being good at the game, and just knowing good techniques and whatnot. But either way, you get the point. I wouldn't really put too much emphasis on the fact that she may have good damage, because, wow, big shocker. And we're very close to WoA 3.x, and I guarantee you we're probably going to get even stronger DPSs when we head there. WoA has very natural damage progression. The reason why I'm saying all this is because, sure, she might not have the free-to-play friendliest teams in the world, but I wouldn't really want damage to be used as a justification for it. Sure.
I don't know. I feel that while that does hold some truth, it also varies on who you're talking to, right? If you're a brand new player, damage is why you should be pulling a unit, right? You should already have a shorekeeper in a arena. So at that point, you need a character that can do damage to carry you through tower and to carry you through, you know, Whimpering Waste, so forth and so on. But if you're talking more so to, you know, a veteran or someone that already has a strong roster, that already has units like Augusta, Cardathea, Furlova, you know, those type of units, then yes, damage is not what we're specifically looking for, because we're already dealing enough damage. At that point, units that can, you know, work with multiple characters, units that have longevity in their kits are going to be more valuable. But for a person that's just building the roster, a DPS that can deal that much damage is definitely going to be ideal and a big first step to their account. So it really depends on who you're talking to. And yes, obviously, as we go down into the game, 3.0, 3.5, 4.0, units will naturally get stronger. That's not a reason to skip a character right now, just because eventually down the line they'll be stronger, because we know they will. They'll also become more, you know, supportive and work with more characters eventually, unless they really decide to go down this very strict path of making characters be absolutely restrictive to another pairing, like maybe Shuen will be with, you know, Galbrena. But other than that, I do think that if you're a new player, or, you know, a newer player, right now damage is something you should be looking for. And if you're a veteran player, somewhere that's more, you know, into the game, that has been playing for a while, damage is definitely not something that's vital. Also, she's tooting that butt in that pause screen. That's crazy.
It could be very good, but even if it is, yeah, sure, but everyone's damage is good. You could go for somebody that's far cheaper in cost, and you wouldn't.
That is a very good way to put it. Damage is not a factor when there is no time DPS checks. All endgame has timers, so damage is crucial. Absolutely true on that. Every endgame in Wuthering Waves has a timer on it. So if you're a player that has, like, I don't know, Encore, and you're clearing with an Encore, and then you happen to get a Galbrena is going to change your perspective of the game and the way you progress and clear content dramatically. So once again, if you're, it's one of those things that we got to take it from a very specific point of view. We're talking about free-to-play players. If you're a free-to-play, if you're relatively new, Galbrena with her damage, she's coming in, she's going to be great for you. And obviously that doesn't apply to people that already have, even if they're free-to-play, very well-built accounts and teams.
Even be missing out on that much DPS. Now in Galbrena's case, if she does end up having very favorable damage, I will say that at least she's not negative status. Zanya and Cardathea are, and those two are like some of the top performing DPSs in the game right now. So sure, that is also something else that you could consider. But ultimately, do I think that Galbrena is a free-to-play friendly unit? Do I think that if a free-to-play is getting her, is she going to be worth your time? Well, she can use Static Mist most likely. All of her gun DPSs have been able to up until this point. And her teams, she has options at the very least. I personally think that this is definitely no Phoebe situation where, oh my goodness, you're getting the most bang for your asteroids that there has ever been. But I do think that if you're a free-to-play that's been playing for a while and you have certain investments, she's going to be a pretty good pickup for you. However, I would say that if you don't have those certain investments, I honestly think she's very passable. Is she gonna be good? Listen, it's Wuthering Waves. Every new release is good. You can literally go for everybody and feel guilt-free about it. I'm not really focusing on that so much as I'm focusing on her accessibility. I guarantee you she's going to still feel strong on a more Teffy Shorekeeper team, and she is definitely going to feel a lot better with a free-to-play setup compared to negative status characters with a free-to-play setup. And if that's what matters to you, then I think that Galbrena is going to be a perfectly good pickup. But I think that if you want the cheapest possible pickup, then Galbrena might not be the right choice, because there are other DPSs that are cheaper. For example, Carlotta is a good example of a very easily accessible DPS who has multiple second slot teammates that she can use, while also being able to use 4-stars like Yang Yang if you don't have any other options.
Yes, that's true, but we talked about this earlier in another video, bro. You really want to go for a character that is at this point, what, 4, 5, 6 months old, as opposed to a brand new DPS. What's going to happen 6 months down the line where Carlotta is now a year old and Galbrena is only 6 months old, right? Maybe by that point, Carlotta might have fallen off a little bit more in terms of damage, where maybe Galbrena will have a little bit more longevity, right? So in my personal, experience, I always advise going for the newest DPS character. So yes, I agree that Carlotta has some more free-to-play options, but Galbrena also has a lot of good options, and while all of them or most of them will not be free-to-play options, I feel that her performance overall might end up being a little bit better than older DPS units. We'll have to wait and see. We'll test it out, but that's just my advice.
You do have options of other DPSs. So, do I think that you should get Galbrena in particular? Evaluate what you genuinely need. If you think that a fusion hypercarry is seriously the best investment for you, yes, go for it. But don't be baited by huge damage numbers whenever she comes out. Big shocker, it's Wuthering Waves. Everyone does well. There are layers to what makes a character a good investment. Damage on its own is not a very special thing anymore, so...
Yeah, I agree with that last statement. There are layers to what makes a character special in WoWa nowadays. It's not just about the damage. The damage is important, don't get me wrong. I don't know why they saying that. Damage is a very important factor. Yes, every character that's coming out is dealing more and more damage. That's just the way it goes. And older characters can still clear all the endgame content. Wuthering Waves is relatively easy of a game. There are many factors that, value a character, right? How viable they are, how self-sufficient they are, their gameplay. Do they have good gameplay that, synergizes well with the current endgame content, right? Can they chase down targets? Do they have range to their attacks? Do they have gap closers? Things like that. That's big part of a character. Their kit, the way they play, the way they deal the damage, how fast they ramp up, and how dependent they are on other units, like, for example, Zani. She's kind of bricked without peeps. But yeah, that's pretty much it regarding this video. I do think Galbrena is a very interesting character. If you already have the Mono Fusion team, you might as well skip her unless you just like her. If you have any of the Fusion characters already, you can slot her with them and she'll perform fine. Or if you really like her, get Shuen, because they're just going to do a really good partner, synergy when it comes to their damage. Hyper carry unit, and she's pretty damn good in not just her damage, but her gameplay. But that's going to be it for me. The last Galbrena video of the day. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. For now, peace.